What are some of the biggest handling changes that you can tell us about from F124 to F125?
With 25, we set out to create a driving model where players can pick it up straight away and have instant confidence in the way that it feels. So a reliable sense of traction, an adjustable feel around the edge of the limit of grip. And key to this was a predictable transition between mechanical and aerodynamic grip. We have made some other tweaks, so we've adjusted the gearbox for more seamless shifts. We don't want situations where the car gets upset by over-aggressive gear shifts. We've fine-tuned the ERS deployment. The dirty air and the slipstream behaviours have also been adjusted to promote more effective overtaking. And we've also modified the tyre wear profiles for more varied tyre strategies.
When players who have played F124 religiously jump into F125, what sort of things will they be able to feel straight away that's different, or will it be more subtle than that?
Yeah, I think the changes are fairly fundamental. I think definitely that sense of traction. It'll be more predictable, and the balance of the car, the base car setup, for example, in 24 is maybe a little bit over gripped, and in 25 we've tried. Well, we looked very closely at the performance profiles of the vehicles. And tried to get the lap times as realistic as possible.
So are they quicker or slower than last year, would you say, the cars, in terms of like pure lap time?
In the game, they are a little slower. We felt we had a little bit too much grip in 24. That was feedback we were getting from the community, particularly when people put some expert level setups on. And as I mentioned, the blend between the mechanical and aero grip, that's something we really looked at in great detail and tried to get that as accurate as possible. What
did you learn from how handling was handled last year in F124? Obviously it launched with a handling model, and then there was a big update after that. What did you learn from that experience?
So much of 25's most notable handling traits are learnings from 24's reception. With 23 we felt like we got to the end of the road with the existing tech that we had, so with 24 we wanted to bring in a new suspension model in order to achieve greater realism. At launch we found that some traits were a little bit more pronounced around the weight transfer and how the car felt when it was a long way beyond the limits of grip. Some of these things we felt we wanted to nuance, so particularly with that latter point about the feeling of grip well beyond the limit. It was something that some esports level players were able to showcase, and it wasn't quite what we expected. It was only with specific hardware and driving in a specific style you could do that, but we felt that it was worth just refining that handling model to give it the best possible experience to our players.
We've seen the esports drivers taking handling setups to the extreme, in some of the big events. And have you been able to learn from what they're doing and sort of integrate that a little bit more into how the model should behave moving forward, if you like?
Definitely. Yeah, it's been really insightful. So I actually used to play competitively myself back in what feels like a former lifetime. You look for every advantage, no matter how small. In terms of setups, so the esports drivers tend to like as much rotation as they can get. It's the quickest way to drive, but it makes it incredibly difficult. It's not how the majority of players drive, like you said, with the time trial setups. But most people, if they download them, they'll struggle to get around a couple of corners, and that's just due to the phenomenal precision and incredible accuracy that these esports drivers have. So as a result of that, we decided to invite esports players into a handling test in last November. We took their feedback on board. We wanted to better understand their little setup tricks, their use of surfaces, and make tweaks accordingly.
Have there been any changes to the setup sort of menu and some of the options that players can use for this year in terms of the sliders or anything like that the players can expect?
The sliders probably don't look massively different. We have made some tweaks behind the scenes. There's always refinements there to make them as accurate as possible. And we actually took away the engine braking one because we found that was a little bit exploitable. Pretty much esports drivers would only ever have it at the maximum setting, and it wasn't really doing what we wanted it to. But yeah, a lot of these setups behind the scenes, they've had some tweaks, but to the player it looks probably quite similar. But you won't find the 24 setups. You probably won't find them to be as effective in 25. I think players will be finding their own 25 spec setups.
Moving forward, obviously into 2026, it seems like we've got these new F1 regulations coming in for next year. What sort of challenges are they offering? And I suppose from your point of view, right, it's still up in the air for the teams themselves. So how difficult is it for you guys to sort of get a grip on that as well right now?
Yeah, so we've had to deal with a lot of regulation changes, and there's been some fairly key ones since we've been making these F1 games. So I remember back in 2014 we had the hybrid engines, and that was a similar challenge, just trying to understand how that all worked. 2017 probably a little bit more obvious because it was just a case of adding a lot more grip and a lot more downforce and making the cars a hell of a lot faster. 2022, the ground effect. Something that surprised us was how much the porpoising was an issue for teams in real life. I would say that probably 26 is equally as big as any of those, or probably more of a departure. It's quite sizable in terms of its impact on the cars. It will affect the speed quite a lot, and we do have a prototype already. But a key question would be, how does it affect the racing, and that's very difficult to answer at the moment. There's been talk of much less time on full throttle and having to charge the batteries and go about energy management. But there's a lot of unknowns at this stage. It's something we'll keep an eye on.
How hard is it to simulate how an F1 car handles in a game? Just how difficult a thing is that to do for you?
It is tough. There's a lot of aspects to consider. Obviously there's all the vehicle traits themselves, so power delivery, the aerodynamic profile, the overall performance spans of the cars, the tyre wear, the temperature simulations. There's aspects within the sport itself, like how DRS works and how powerful that is, ERS, how that is deployed, and things always change. We get regulation changes fairly regularly. From my perspective, I would say the most difficult aspect is the speed. F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport, and the controller inputs need to reflect that. They can't feel too overwhelming. Things like the counter steer corrections, you have to be able to make them ultra fast because of the speed at which everything happens in Formula One. But what we need to do is make an experience that is approachable to pick up and play, but naturally reflects the fact that you're driving a 1,000 horsepower car which can corner at 5G.